We are now joined this morning by Desiree Kai, who is National Director at Tomorrow Movement, building a movement of young people powerful enough to win ambitious solutions to the climate and economic crises. Formerly President of the National Union of Students and organiser at Get Up, Desiree has run youth-led campaigns on economic justice, education and climate justice. Desiree joins us on the show this morning to speak about their work at Tomorrow Movement, the issues they were concerned with leading up to the federal election, and what action they'd like to see from the Labor Party in their second term. Welcome to 3CR, Des.
Thanks, Phuong. Lovely to be here.
I was wondering if you could start by just telling our listeners a bit more about Tomorrow Movement. We have had members from the organisation in the past, but yeah, it'd be great to give our listeners an update on what you're all about.
So Tomorrow Movement, we're a youth movement trying to fight for essentially a better future. We talk about trying to win good jobs, great public services, and a safe climate for all. Obviously, for young people, climate change has been one of the biggest issues, an existential threat to our generation, right? But the ways that we need to implement solutions to that, need to make sure that we also are bringing up everyone's standard of living and addressing the other big crises that are happening at our time. So we take an intersectional approach to the issue of how do we build a better future for everyone.
Yeah, that's great. I think some of that was, a lot of that is always missing from these big conversations from people in power about crises that are affecting us. It's all sort of interconnected and impact so many people. But yeah, I would like you to speak more about the issues affecting young people. Were you speaking to a lot of young people in the community as part of Tomorrow Movement in the lead up to the election? What were some of the common threads, concerns raised by young people?
Yeah, for sure. In the lead up to the election, we were running a campaign called the Youth Voter Block. So I think reflecting this demographic shift that 47% of young people, or millennials and Gen Z, were they were 47% of the electorate and for the first time outnumbering baby boomers. And so I think there was a lot made in the media about young people. So we were talking to people in the community about what their concerns are. And very broadly, I feel like the sentiment is that Labor in the last 3 years, or just the major parties in general, are not really doing what it takes, or there's this disillusionment with politics about them addressing the issues to the scale that we need them. So things like I said, climate change is one of the biggest issues for our generation, but increasingly over the last few years, housing is a really big issue too. A lot of young people are renters, or trying to buy a home and not really being able to, or not imagining that that's in their future. Things also just the cost of living in general. And obviously Palestine is another really big issue that a lot of voters have, or a lot of young people just have been activated on for the first time, seeing the horror unfolding on our smartphones. Yeah, and seeing then our politicians not really do very much about it.
Yeah, I feel like we often see young people being used as either political talking points or political pawns, or even just invoking, the future generations for their policies and things like that. But do you get the sense that politicians and the major parties are actually listening to young people?
This is an interesting one, because I think to some extent, there is a worry with politicians, this next generation, maybe they won't vote for us, blah, blah. I guess that's not necessarily such a big concern now with Labor and the election result they got on Saturday. We've seen some nods to it, Labor saying that they're going to reduce HECS debt. They're clearly aware that there is a need to do stuff that young people care about, but at the same time, a lot of the measures or policies that they have are sort of these stopgaps, short-term or really small-scale measures that don't actually match up to the scale of the transformation that a lot of young people are trying to hope for. So, I think that is, and a real factor that is contributing to that is the fact that politicians are also thinking about other interests also when they're making policy, the interest of, vested interests, big businesses and fossil fuel billionaires and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, of course. And I guess, to sum up a lot of their policies, they're they're not very ambitious, which I guess is one of the main sort of goals or visions for Tomorrow Movement, is to have ambitious and maybe longer lasting solutions to a lot of the crises that we're facing at the moment. You mentioned obviously the result of the recent federal election. As national director and at Tomorrow Movement, and more broadly a young person, what are some actions that you'd like to see from the federal government now that they're in their second term?
Yeah, I think maybe the main call that we're saying is like we need bolder action to take on the crises of our times. We need the government to stop like tinkering at the edges. We need them to stop stop continuing to approve new fossil fuel projects while they say that they're also investing in renewables. We need them to actually look at the systemic causes of things like the housing crisis rather than just creating short-term loan deposit schemes to help a few more people buy houses. There's a lot that I think is about stop tinkering at the edges and actually try to push make some transformative change or big historic investment in our future. And I think that requires a lot of tough calls and real action, So I think that's our call for the Labor government. There's no more excuses. They can't continue to use the excuse that the Liberal Party or Dutton, they might capitalise on whatever they're doing, because that's clearly not going to happen now. They have such a big majority in Parliament. There's no more excuses for them to not do what is required to make our future safe and just.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm sure that, organisations and youth movements like Tomorrow Movement will continue to hold the government and major parties to account when it comes to these changes. My very last question for you, Des, for this morning is just to reflect on the events that Tomorrow Movement was part of at the start or middle of April with a number of other different youth organisations. It was Youth on the Mic, where it allowed for young people to just share their stories and talk about issues impacting them the most. Will you be having more of these events? And can you talk about the importance of just gathering as huge communities of young people from all over to share?
Yeah. I think that was really great to show that young people. I mean, here's the thing, right? We heard a lot about young people's voting power in the election, but actually we know that our political power goes beyond that, and it's when we gather together that we can build, build solidarity, I guess, with each other, or realize that we are a collective who can take action together. And so, I think we'll definitely be gathering to talk about how we feel about the election and also what's next and how we're going to continue to hold Labor to account. One of the things we are planning is to get together with a bunch of other organisations across the progressive movement and show Labor that just like what I said before, there's no more excuses for not taking action. So we are planning an action this Saturday in major cities on the East Coast, a snap rally to basically say, okay, it's time to push our shoulders to putting all the pressure on Labor to do what we need for our future. So we're going to continue to gather and rally. Okay, it's time to push our shoulders to putting all the pressure on Labor to do what we need for our future. So we're going to continue to gather and rally and bring young people together, because our political power doesn't end just as we voted.
Well, on that note, I guess we'll end there, Des. It's been great to chat to you, and I'm sure we'll keep in touch to see what other organising work you guys are doing. But for now, thank you so much for joining us on 3CR.
Thanks for having me.